It all starts with a call. One of those calls in the middle of the night. A fire. A fourth-floor apartment. And what looks like a terrible but simple tragedy, well, by the next morning, it's going to unravel into this unbelievable story of betrayal, conspiracy, and a really chilling misuse of knowledge. Let's dive in.
So picture this. It's October 2025. We're in Gandhi Vihar in North Delhi, a neighborhood just buzzing with students. All these ambitious folks trying to get into the civil service. So when a call about a fire comes in, first responders are thinking it's a routine emergency. Tragic for sure, but routine.
But once they get inside that smoke-filled apartment, the scene is just grim. Amid all the wreckage, they find the charred remains of a young man. And the door? It's locked from the inside. At first, that seems to point to a horrific, but contained, accident.
So yeah, at first glance, it really does look like a terrible accident. But as investigators start to sift through the ashes, a new question starts to bubble up. What if this fire wasn't an accident at all? What if it was something way, way more sinister?
Okay, so let's break down that initial report. What were the authorities actually working with in those first critical hours?
So the victim, he's identified as 32-year-old Ramkesh Meena. And like so many others in that neighborhood, he was a UPSC aspirant, basically dedicating his entire life to studying for these incredibly tough civil service exams. This was a guy with a future, He had a clear goal he was working toward. The scene itself seemed to tell a pretty simple, tragic story. You've got a locked door and what looks like a busted appliance. So the first working theory is a deadly fire sparked by an AC unit that just blew up. It's plausible, it's tragic, and it seems like, okay, case closed, right? Well, not exactly.
And this, right here, is where the whole story takes a massive turn. Because as police started digging deeper, that simple, neat narrative of an accident, it just began to completely fall apart.
And just look at the difference here. On one side, you have the initial theory, a believable, tragic accident. But on the other, you have the shocking reality the police were uncovering, a carefully planned, premeditated murder specifically staged to look like an accident. The entire case just got flipped on its head.
So what made them make that dramatic jump? Well, in a word, technology. CCTV footage that just didn't add up. The victim's own phone records, location data from people close to him. All of these digital breadcrumbs started to paint a very, very different picture of his final hours. A picture that involved other people. A picture that spelled conspiracy.
Okay, so with the whole accident theory now completely shattered, the investigation had a new focus. Who would want Ramkesh Meena dead, and why? And the answer, it turns out, was a lot closer to home than anyone could have guessed.
Pretty quickly, three key people emerged as the main suspects. First, you have Amrita Chauhan, the victim's 21-year-old live-in partner. And here's the kicker. She's a forensic science student. Then, there's her 27-year-old ex-boyfriend, Sumit Kashyap. And finally, his buddy, 29-year-old Sandeep Kumar.
So what was the motive driving all of this? According to the police, Amrita had made a horrible discovery. Ramkesh had apparently been secretly recording intimate videos of her, and when she confronted him demanding that he delete them, he refused, and that refusal seems to be what lit the fuse.
Feeling completely humiliated, totally betrayed, she allegedly reached out to her ex-boyfriend and his friend. Now, the initial idea wasn't necessarily murder. The goal was to teach him a lesson, a phrase that, as we know, would escalate into something way, way more final.
And this brings us to what is, honestly, the most chilling part of this whole story. This wasn't just some crime of passion. No, this was a calculated plot that used the very tools of justice to try and hide a murder.
The alleged mastermind behind the whole thing was Amrita herself. As a forensic science student, she gets it. She understands crime scenes, she understands evidence, the whole process of an investigation. Police even noted she had a thing for crime web series, which suggests she might have been drawing inspiration from fiction to stage this very real crime.
So how did they allegedly do it? The plan was meticulous. First, they neutralized the victim, strangling and beating him. Then, to make absolutely sure the fire would destroy any evidence, they add accelerants, common things like oil, ghee, liquor. They even opened a gas cylinder valve near his head to really fuel the flames. Then they lit the fire. And finally, the masterstroke, they staged the door, locking it from the inside to make the whole thing look like a perfect, tragic accident.
But for all that meticulous planning, the conspiracy unraveled surprisingly fast. Once the police zeroed in on the trio, the arrests came one after another.
Just a few weeks after the crime, all 3 alleged conspirators were in custody.
Look, this story is more than just one tragic crime. It really touches on a bunch of deeply modern issues. So why does this case matter beyond the headlines? What are the bigger takeaways here?
First, it's a huge, stark reminder of the dark side of digital trust and just how easily consent can be violated in a relationship. Then there's this twisted version of the CSI effect, where forensic knowledge isn't used to solve a crime, but to try and commit the perfect one. The case also highlights the incredible challenge investigators face when a crime scene is deliberately staged. And finally, it really speaks to the unique vulnerabilities of young students who are living so far away from their families and support systems.
So as things stand right now, the Delhi police have filed a case for murder and criminal conspiracy. Key evidence, things like hard drives and phones, they're all still undergoing forensic analysis, so the full legal process is really just getting started.
Which leaves us with one last, really unsettling question. You know, forensic science was created to find the truth in the chaos of a crime scene. But when that knowledge is used as a weapon to actually create the chaos, who's left to find the truth?